Hello and welcome to my channel, Coding with Zach. Last, we built out a rock, paper, scissors game using if-else statements and user input and a randomly generated number for the computer. And today we will be changing the list that we use to a dictionary, and we'll also be using a while loop to continuously run the game until we use a breakout condition. This will prevent us from having to call the .py file every time we need to run the game. And we'll also add some counters so we can tell how many times the computer has won and how many times we have won. But first I want to go over how we can get around using the Python command every time we call a .py file. If you come over here to the search bar, type in cmd, right click command prompt, run as administrator, and then type in ASSOC space .py equals Python and press enter. Exit out of that, open a regular command prompt, and then change the directory to the directory where you run your program, and then type in hello world.py or any .py file you have and press enter. You should get a pop-up, and it's the first item in that pop-up that you click that's Python that'll let you run .py files automatically without having to use Python in the command. Going back to the desktop. Now to get started, I'm going to be creating a dictionary. And to do this, you need an open curly bracket and a closed curly bracket. And then we're going to say rock colon space 1, paper colon space, well, that's going to be 1, this is going to be 0, and you'll need a comma after the 0, and then scissors, and then you also need a comma after the 1. And then to check if we instantiated the dictionary properly, we're going to come down below the dictionary and type print dictionary, open bracket, close bracket, open parentheses, close parentheses, rock. And what we should get back is a 0. And because rock 0, paper 1, scissors 2, a dictionary is like a key value pair. And you can use any keyword you want for any value you want. And just in this case, we're saying rock is equal to 0, paper is equal to 1, and scissors is equal to 2. Come back to the command prompt. I'm going to open up a new command prompt. Change directory. rps.py. Get a 0, and that's what we were expecting. Now to implement this dictionary that we just created, I'm going to first remove this print. I'm going to come down here to the if, and I'm going to use the dictionary here instead. That way we can get user input as rock, paper, scissors instead of 0, 1, or 2. And I'm going to copy this and paste it down into the other two else if statements. And then for the print user input, since we're going to be getting specific user input, we're just going to print back out that user input. That way we're doing the logical checks with the value of the dictionary, but we can just print out what that user actually put in on the front side, but we're checking the back side with the numbers. And then we can open up a command prompt, change the directory, rps.py, and then rock. User inputs rock, computer input scissors, the user 1. Okay, so if you can see, You can see this, it's on the screen. It first printed out user input rock, and that's because we inputted rock. So it comes down to the first if statement. The dictionary user input, we put rock into the user input, and then rock in the dictionary is a 0. And then these two print statements run, and then it comes down to computer input is scissors, so that means that this condition was true. It was a 2, so the user won. And I hope that makes sense. We're just passing in the rock value to the dictionary, and we're using the dictionary to get a 0 value, and then we're using that 0 compared to the other numbers to figure out who won and who lost. Now let's implement a while loop, and in this while loop we want to start it up here above the computer number and the user input. And that's because we want to continuously generate random numbers and continuously get user inputs while this is true. And we're going to say while user input is not equal to stop. And then I'm going to highlight everything, press tab, and that'll correct the indentation. But we also have to instantiate the user input at the beginning with 2 quotes like that. If you did not, you would get an error saying that user input is not instantiated, and this is the way you get around it. And if we go back to the command prompt, type in rps.py, press enter. I'm going to say rock, and then paper, scissors, and it looks like it is working. I'm going to press enter stop, come back, and this is not in the dictionary. That is the issue. And the way we're going to handle this is then we can say come back below the input and say if user input is in dictionary, then we can run everything below here. I'm going to highlight it, press tab to fix the indentation, and you can see that if it's not indented properly, the if is grayed out. So I'm going to press tab to indent it properly. Come down here, backspace, backspace, type in else. The game make this an else if user input is equal to stop, and then I'm going to say print the game has finished. Save this, go back up here, rps.py, stop, the game has finished, and then rock, paper, scissors, and then random, and it doesn't do anything. I want to actually use an else statement here and say print the input was not valid, and then we can remove this one, this else statement that previously checked for us, because we're doing it on the outside now, and it'll never reach inside if that user input's not in the dictionary. And then we're going to stop this to check again, rps.py, print is not defined, the input was not valid. Oh, I capitalized that print, sorry. Remove that, back to a lowercase, come back to the command prompt, press up, the input was not valid. And rock, paper, scissors, stop. Okay, the game has finished. Now, I believe the only thing we're missing are the counters. So I'm going to come up here and instantiate some counters. I'm going to say computer counter is equal to 0, and then user counter is equal to 0. And then we'll increment these each time the when condition is true. So the computer one, we'll say computer counter plus equals computer counter plus 1. And this is just saying computer counter is now equal to what the computer counter previously was plus 1. And it will increment by 1 each time. Now a shorthand way to do this is just saying computer counter is plus equal to 1. And I'll show you once I put all these in. I'm going to use the user counter as the one I showed you first, and then I'll keep computer counter the same, and you can see they're incrementing both at the same, well, not at the same rate, but when one of the when conditions is met, that they'll increment as 1. So I'm going to highlight this, copy it, come down to the user one, and the user one. And then I'm going to copy the computer number and print it or increment it below where the computer has 1. And then at the end of this, I want to print out the user has 1 plus user counter plus the, I'm going to use a new line, and we haven't talked about this, but there are certain reserved words and between quotes when you use a string that you can use to print out new lines, tabs, and stuff like that. So this /n just means started on a new line. So the user has 1 would be on one line in the command prompt, and then the user counter is printed out, and then right after that a new line character is printed. So underneath, so the what's printed out next will be the computer has 1, and that computer has 1 to be on a new line. Computer counter. We'll save this. I'm going to go back to the command prompt, press up for rps.py. Syntax was invalid. Sorry, I forgot to add the plus symbol right here. And this happens a lot with programming. You move back and forth from the command prompt to the code to troubleshoot stuff and solve problems. It's just the way it is. Rock can only concatenate string, not int. And this is line 50. We'll have to cast these integer numbers that we're creating to a string for them to print out properly. Because up here this is a 0, and Python determines that these are integers, and it's just saying on line 50 you have a print error and it says can only concatenate string, not integer, and we know that user counter and computer counter are both integers because they're numbers. So I'm going to press up rps.py, rock. The game was a tie, so that makes sense. The game was a tie. The user one, and you see the user incremented by 1. The user one, I mean, the game was a tie both of these times, and then the user one again. There we go. Computer won once. So we won 5 times, and the computer has won once. And that's all we have to show you for how to use dictionaries and while loops to create a rock, paper, scissors game. In the next video, we'll go over how to use functions in Python, and then we'll turn this rock, paper, scissors game into a function. And I plan on making more content on different subjects in Python. If you like this content, please like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching.